I accidentally found out my girlfriend's secret, and now I can't sleep at night. I never imagined I'd air my personal drama online, but desperation does strange things to a person. My name is Ethan, and I'm here to share the story of how I accidentally discovered my girlfriend Rachel's secret, and why I still can't sleep at night. I still remember the exact moment it happened. My heart was pounding so fiercely I could almost hear it echoing in my skull, and my hands trembled against the smooth surface of our kitchen table. That night, I'd stumbled onto a discovery so jarring that every image I'd ever had of Rachel was instantly shattered. It felt like I'd tripped on a loose thread in the carefully woven tapestry of our relationship, only to watch the entire thing unravel before my eyes. And the worst part is, I didn't mean to find out. I wasn't trying to pry or dig into her personal life. It just happened. Now I'm caught in this unbearable place of not knowing how to confront her, not knowing if I can ever look at her the same way again, and yet still loving her so much that it hurts. We'd been living together for about 3 months. Before that, we'd dated for a little over a year, and things had progressed so naturally. Everyone around us had commented on how good we seemed together. I'm usually quiet and thoughtful, while she's this vibrant burst of energy that can light up a room. Sometimes, I wondered what she saw in me, but she'd laugh and say I grounded her. It was one of those relationships that felt balanced in all the right ways. We'd gone on road trips, spent lazy Sundays cooking complicated meals just for fun, binging old TV shows in bed, and giggling about nothing until late into the night. All those memories were swirling in my head the moment I found out about her secret. It was like watching a home video and fast forward while standing on a rug someone was about to yank out from under my feet. I don't want to make it sound like I was completely clueless before this. There were signs. Or at least looking back, I can identify 100 little red flags that seemed inconsequential at the time. Take, for instance, the nights she'd come home an hour later than she said she would, claiming she'd simply lost track of time with friends. Or that one time a guy knocked on our door asking for her, and she brushed it off as if it were a misunderstanding with a delivery. She was always quick with a laugh, quick with an explanation. She could diffuse any tension with her breezy, confident manner. And I, being too trusting and perhaps a little naive, never pressed too hard. It didn't occur to me to question her. I loved her and assumed we just had that foundation of honesty that I'd always heard was crucial for a healthy relationship. But trust is a fragile thing. One moment, it's rock solid, the anchor that keeps you grounded in a storm. Then, in a flash, that anchor can vanish, and you're left flailing in the open sea. That's exactly how it felt that night when I accidentally saw the contents of an email on her laptop. I can't even remember why I needed to borrow it. Maybe I was looking for an old photo or printing something out. Whatever it was, I typed in her password. She'd given it to me earlier for something trivial, and an unread message popped up. It was an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line was something innocuous, along the lines of, "Regarding your request." So I was about to close it, figuring it was none of my business. But the first few lines were visible, and my curiosity got the better of me. It's always that small moment, that faint twinge of, wait, what does that mean? That draws you in, right? The text mentioned a location I'd never heard her mention. Something about arrangements, and a reference to a sum of money. It didn't make sense in any normal context. Rachel wasn't in real estate. She wasn't planning a wedding. She wasn't trying to buy anything major like a car. Yet these words, down payment, secrecy, agreement, the last time this happened, they formed a puzzle that I couldn't ignore. For a second, I just stared at the email, disoriented. It felt like I was reading a coded message or something that belonged in a spy movie. Then my mind started spinning with questions. What arrangement? What secrecy? Why would she be making a big down payment on anything without telling me? I tried to keep calm, telling myself there must be a rational explanation, that maybe she was planning some big surprise or investing in something for her parents. But as my eyes scanned further, I caught references to keeping things hidden, ensuring no legal complications, and potential personal risk. My stomach twisted into a knot. I clicked on the sender's name, someone named Wade, who I'd never heard of before in my life, and saw a string of previous emails. Heart-pounding, I checked the earlier ones. Each was more cryptic than the last. Mentions of a past incident, of documents, and of Rachel's name in conjunction with words like pledge, legal bind, and urgent. The more I read, the dizzier I felt. A voice in my head told me to stop. This was obviously none of my business. Maybe it was deeply private. Maybe it was something from her past she wasn't ready to share, but I was too far in. I couldn't pretend I'd never seen it. I closed the laptop the moment I heard her footsteps in the hallway. She walked in wearing that trademark smile, and my heart clenched like a fist. I realized then how terrifying secrets can be. They widen the gap between two people in a matter of seconds. Suddenly, I felt like there was a cavernous distance between us, and I was standing on one edge, alone with 1,000 questions. She kissed my cheek and asked if I'd found what I needed on her laptop. I gave some half-hearted reply. If she noticed the tremor in my voice, she didn't show it. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying the words in those emails over and over. Down payment. Hidden. No legal complications. My imagination ran wild. By dawn, I had conjured so many nightmarish scenarios. Was she in debt? Was she involved in something illegal? Was she hiding a separate life? My mind bounced from one possibility to another. None of them pleasant. And the worst part? I felt a strange guilt for snooping, even though it had been accidental. If she found out I'd read her private emails, what would she think? Would she feel betrayed? The next few days were torture. I tried to act normal, but apparently, I'm not as good of an actor as she is, because she started asking me if I was feeling all right, if something had happened at work. She even felt my forehead once, to check if I had a fever. And each time, I lied, telling her I was fine, maybe just a bit stressed. Inside, my questions kept multiplying. I wanted to talk to her openly, but a part of me was terrified of what she might say if I cornered her. I loved her so deeply, and yet now I couldn't help suspecting she was someone entirely different from the woman I thought I knew. One evening, I decided I had to know more. She was out meeting a friend. At least, that's what she told me. I booted up her laptop again, heart pounding so loudly it felt like it would crack my ribcage. I found the emails once more and started reading every line, following links, trying to piece together what was happening. There were references to some property, a remote cabin in a place I'd never heard of, connected to her name, dates, sums of money, and instructions about how to remain off any official registers. It was bizarre. Why would she need to hide a property purchase? And who was Wade? A realtor? A lawyer? Something else altogether? At one point, I found an attachment. A PDF. Holding my breath, I opened it to discover a long document filled with legal jargon. Her signature at the bottom. I skimmed through paragraphs about liability, confidentiality, disclaimers. My eyes landed on a phrase. In the event of any inquiry or investigation, the undersigned agrees to assume all associated risks. My head started throbbing. Risks? Investigation? Rachel's name was there, on a legally binding document, tied to something that from the outside looked suspicious at best. I was so wrapped up in reading that I almost didn't hear the front door open. She came in, and I slammed the laptop shut just in time. My heart was pounding at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She asked what I was up to. I tried to say I was just checking my social media. She frowned, something in her expression telling me she sensed my tension, but she let it go. Why wouldn't she? She had no reason to believe I was rummaging through her personal files. I'd never done anything like that before, at least not until now. From that moment on, I was consumed by the secret. I had trouble focusing at work, skipping lunch to dig online for any clue about the cabin's location, searching for the name Wade to see if I could figure out who this person was, but it was like chasing a shadow. I found nothing definitive, just more suspicion swirling in my head. The nights got worse. She'd lie next to me, sleeping soundly, while I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with fragments of the emails. Occasionally, she'd stir, drape an arm over my chest, and I'd feel a pang of guilt so strong it was physically painful. I wanted to hold her close and forget everything, but the knowledge I had gained gnawed at me relentlessly. Then came the second big jolt. One Saturday, I'd planned a lazy morning for the two of us, maybe order breakfast in and watch a movie on the couch. She told me she had to run a quick errand. I waited, scrolling on my phone, trying not to think about the cabin. After about 40 minutes, I glanced out the window and saw something that made my heart drop. A stranger, a tall man in a dark jacket, was standing with her by the car. They were talking intently, both of them looking over some papers. I strained to see from behind the curtains. Her expression was serious. She wasn't smiling or chatting casually. It almost looked confrontational. Then, as if they could feel my gaze, they both looked toward the window. I jerked back instantly, heart hammering. A few minutes later, I heard the door open, and the man was gone. She walked back in, face pale. I asked if she was all right, and she tried to laugh it off, saying it was just someone who got the wrong address. But I knew she was lying. Something in her eyes, I hadn't seen that expression before. Fear, maybe, or desperation. My chest tightened with the realization that this was bigger than just some hidden cabin or a shady investment. That man looked too intense, too purposeful. Her voice shook slightly as she tried to redirect the conversation to, "What are we going to watch?" I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend so easily. But I forced a weak smile anyway, letting her think I believed her, letting the tension subside. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. As we lay in bed, I asked her if anything was wrong, if there was something she was worried about. She froze for a second, then turned to me with this forced grin and said she was fine. I left it at that, like a coward, I couldn't push further. I was scared of losing her. I'd always told myself honesty is the backbone of any healthy relationship. Yet here I was, gagged by my own terror, terrified of hearing the truth. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent the next few days battling myself, mustering the courage to confront her directly. But before I had the chance, I received a shock of my own. At work, on an otherwise ordinary Wednesday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end, male, quiet, with a strange, deliberate tone, asked me if I was Rachel's partner. Before I could answer, he said, "Tell her there are limits to what I can do. And if she doesn't keep her end of the bargain, I can't protect her." Then he hung up. I stood there at my desk, phone in hand, my entire body cold. Protect her from what? Keep her end of the bargain? Was this Wade? Was this someone else? My boss asked if I was okay. Apparently, I looked as pale as a ghost. I mumbled something about feeling unwell and left early. I needed air, needed to think. Fear gripped me like a vice. If she was in trouble, I had to help her. But how if she wouldn't even tell me what was going on? And what did that phone call mean for me? Was I now entangled in whatever she was mixed up in? That night, I confronted her, or tried to. I blurted out something like, "Who the hell is calling me at work? Who's Wade? What is going on?" The minute her eyes widened in shock, I regretted not planning out a gentler approach. She asked me how I knew that name, a tremor in her voice. I stammered, telling her the truth, that I'd seen an email, that someone called me, that I was worried about her. I expected her to blow up at me for invading her privacy, but she just stood there, silent. Her face went white, and tears welled up in her eyes. Then she bolted out of the room, locked herself in the bathroom, and refused to come out for the next 2 hours. I could hear her crying, muffling sobs into what sounded like a towel. I didn't know if I should knock, plead with her to open the door, or just give her space. My heart hammered like crazy, fear and guilt choking me. When she finally emerged, eyes red and swollen, she mumbled that she needed some time to think and walked straight into the bedroom. I didn't see her again until the next morning. She'd obviously barely slept. Neither had I. We moved around each other like strangers in a cramped apartment, not touching, not speaking, just existing in a weird, tension-filled bubble. It was excruciating. The silence between us stretched on for days, interrupted only by awkward small talk. "I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" While the bigger questions roared unspoken. We no longer touched at night. She'd climb into bed, stay on her side, facing away from me. I'd lie awake, tortured by the same recurring thought. If I pressed her for answers, would it break us completely? Yet not pressing her was slowly killing me with anxiety. Eventually, something had to give. A week after my discovery, she stayed out late again. The clock neared midnight, and I was pacing the living room, stomach in knots, waiting for her to walk through the door. My phone vibrated. It was a text from her. "I'm safe. Don't worry. I'll explain soon." Those words gave me no comfort at all. I waited another hour, each minute feeling like an eternity. When she finally came home, she looked so drained, like she'd aged years in a matter of days. Without a word, she dropped onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. That's when I knelt beside her and gently said we needed to talk, that I loved her, that whatever it was, we'd face it together. She broke into sobs, repeating how sorry she was for bringing trouble to my doorstep, how she never meant for me to be involved. It took her a while to form coherent sentences, but eventually she told me everything. She came from a family with a tangled past, something about an uncle who had dipped into illegal dealings, pulling other relatives into his mess. Years ago, to help them out, she'd signed some papers, unknowingly tying herself to a financial arrangement that was borderline fraudulent. She was young and naive, she said, trusting a family member who swore it was safe. Then it spiraled out of control. There were debts, threats, and a scramble to hide certain assets so that they wouldn't get seized by authorities. The cabin was part of that. A property purchased under her name, but intended for shady dealings, hidden away from official eyes. That's why the documents stressed secrecy, risk, and so forth. She hadn't wanted me to know because she was terrified I'd see her as complicit in a crime, or that I'd freak out and leave. And she also believed that if she kept it hidden, she could somehow fix it on her own before it reached critical mass. Wade, it turned out, was some kind of middleman. Not exactly a lawyer, not exactly a criminal, but someone who specialized in handling problems, and she was relying on him to keep the situation contained. Yet the complexities kept increasing. The man I'd seen by the car was an associate of Wade's, pressing her for additional payments. The phone call at my job was a warning that time was running out, and either she'd settle her debts or risk having everything exposed. She kept repeating how sorry she was, how she never wanted me to be afraid or to get pulled into this nightmare. She just wanted to protect me, spare me the stress. I sat there, absorbing her words, feeling waves of relief, anger, fear, and deep sadness all at once. Relief that she hadn't been lying about something like cheating or a double life with another lover. Anger that she hadn't trusted me enough to tell me from the start. Fear that we might still be on the hook for something big and ugly that could tear our life apart. Sadness because I could see the toll it had taken on her. She looked so broken, so ashamed. When she finished, we just stared at each other. All that tension turned into a moment of raw vulnerability. Finally, I placed a hand on her shoulder, telling her it was going to be okay, that we'd figure it out. But inside, a storm was still raging. Could I truly forgive her for keeping me in the dark all this time? Could we move past the fact that she essentially risked our future together without ever giving me a choice? She stayed home the next day, making calls, trying to disentangle herself from the arrangement. I spoke with a friend of mine who worked at a law firm, giving hypothetical details, testing the waters on how complicated something like this might be. He hinted that the situation could get pretty messy if authorities were to look into it. Potential fraud, money laundering implications. I felt a creeping panic. Had I unwittingly lived with someone who could be implicated in serious criminal activities? And then guilt slapped me hard. This was the woman I love. The woman who never batted an eye when I was sick for a week straight, who nursed me with soup and watched silly movies to keep my spirits up. The woman who always made me feel like the world was a better place just by smiling at me. Could I turn on her now? Abandon her when she needed me most? Over the next few weeks, she was in and out of tense meetings, phone calls, desperate attempts to pay off or negotiate away the obligations tied to her name. It was a roller coaster of hope and despair. One moment, she'd come home, saying Wade believed they were close to a resolution. The next, some new fee or legal snag appeared, and all the while she insisted I stay out of it, that it was her problem, her consequence to bear. But it was too late for that. I was as tangled up emotionally as she was financially. I started losing weight, barely eating. My nerves shot from constant anxiety. I'd check my phone compulsively, terrified that the next call would be a lawyer, or worse, the police. She noticed, but was too overwhelmed to console me as she once had. Our relationship felt like it was on the brink of collapse, both of us exhausted, living under a cloud of fear and uncertainty. One evening, she broke down, sobbing that she understood if I wanted to leave her, that she loved me enough to let me go if that's what I needed. She was convinced that this nightmare would drag on, that eventually, the entire house of cards would come crashing down, and I'd be left resenting her for destroying our life together. For a long moment, I just held her in silence, my own tears welling up. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me desperately wished I could rewind time to the days when our biggest worry was whether to get pizza or tacos for dinner. But that was gone. This was our reality now, and if I walked away, I'd be leaving the woman I claimed to love at her lowest point. That didn't feel right. In the end, I told her I wasn't going anywhere, that we'd get through it. Did I fully believe it? Not entirely, but I wanted to believe it so badly. I needed to. Eventually, through a mix of negotiations, partial payments, and some legal maneuvering, with Wade's dubious help, she managed to sever her involvement. It cost her nearly everything she had saved, but at least it meant they wouldn't be dragging her into court or threatening her family. It was a patchwork solution, precarious at best, but it was something. As we signed the final forms, I felt an immense wave of relief, though it was tinged with lingering unease. The secrets were out, but the damage was done. We were like two people who'd survived a shipwreck, clinging to debris in a storm-tossed sea, grateful to be alive yet shivering and terrified. That first night after she was free of the arrangement, we both lay in bed, eyes open in the dark. She reached out and took my hand. It was the simplest gesture, but after weeks of near-constant tension, it felt like an emotional floodgate opened. I turned to face her, saw tears glistening on her cheeks. She whispered, "I'm sorry again," voice trembling, and I told her I was sorry for digging around behind her back, for not coming to her immediately, for letting the fear fester between us. We cried together, holding each other, finally letting ourselves be vulnerable in a way we hadn't been for a long time. It felt like the first tiny step towards something resembling healing. Of course, it wasn't an instant fix. In the weeks that followed, we struggled with the aftermath. We'd get into arguments over small things, each of us still on edge. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking at her sideways, wondering if she had any other secrets, and she'd notice, tear up, accusing me of never truly forgiving her. It took many long conversations, some yelling, some crying, some silent embraces, to slowly build up even a fraction of the trust we once had. During this process, I discovered that sleeplessness can linger even after the immediate crisis is resolved. Nights would still find me wide awake, listening to the faint sound of her breathing, replaying the entire ordeal in my head, questioning how we got here. But each time, I'd remind myself we were moving forward, step by tiny step. She made a conscious effort to be open about everything, from a random text message to her work schedule, and I tried my best to accept her past mistakes without dredging them up in every argument. Some days are better than others. There are mornings when she's dancing around the kitchen in her pajamas, singing off-key to some 90s pop song, and I think maybe we'll be okay. Maybe this was just a nasty chapter that we're finally turning the page on. Then there are days when she's withdrawn, haunted by guilt, and I'm stuck in my own spiral of resentment for how she upended my sense of security. We haven't decided yet if we'll move away, start fresh in a new apartment, or even a new city. Part of me thinks a change of scenery might help us leave this behind. Another part of me worries we'd just be running from our problems. Still, I love her. That's the one thing I've never wavered on, despite everything that's happened. And she loves me, even if her attempts to shield me from her family's skeletons nearly cost us both our sanity. We're trying to rebuild a life together on the ashes of secrecy and lies, hoping that honesty and empathy can take root where deceit once grew. I wish I could say I'm at peace now, that the nightmares have stopped, and I sleep soundly. The truth is, I still have nights when I wake up drenched in sweat, my mind conjuring visions of losing her, of men in dark jackets banging on our door, of the phone ringing with more threats. But whenever that fear grips me, I remind myself that we survived the worst storm so far, that the only way forward is to communicate, to share our burdens rather than hide them. She's promised me there are no more secrets, no more skeletons, and I want so badly to believe her. So here we are, two people still trying to find our footing after the ground was yanked out from beneath us. It's not a fairy tale, and it's definitely not the perfect relationship we once imagined, but maybe that's okay. Real love gets tested in the fire sometimes, and if we can make it through this, perhaps we'll end up stronger, or at least more aware of how fragile trust can be. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if this lingering heaviness will ever truly lift from our relationship, but I do know that I can't imagine my life without her smile, her laughter, her warmth next to me on the couch during a movie marathon. So I hold on day by day, clinging to the hope that we can write a new chapter. One without secrets, one where we face the world side by side. Because in the end, love is all about choosing someone despite their flaws, despite their mistakes, and despite the pain they may have unintentionally caused. And as long as there's still love left to give and a willingness to fight for what we have, I can keep believing that the sleepless nights will eventually fade, replaced by something resembling peace, maybe even happiness. And that, to me, is worth every frightening step we've had to take